Today we're going to teach you how to deadlift in 7 simple steps, and this is going to help you become nice and efficient in the lift. When we become efficient in the lift, it means we can probably drive from areas of strength rather than exposing small areas which are possibly going to increase the chances of injury. The deadlift is a great exercise to build lower body strength, and it does get a bad rep. But more often than not, it gets a bad rep because people lift too heavy too often, not giving them enough chance to adapt, rather than actual technique flaws. The technique flaws will have a carryover into the efficiency of the lift, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to increase the risk of injury. So we're going to run through those steps now. Step 1, the position of your shins and the feet relative to the bar. Whenever you deadlift, I want you to think about walking up to the bar, and I want you to make contact with your shins against the bar. This is going to allow for a nice vertical position of the shins, and therefore for us to put the hands on the bar, we're going to have to hinge over from the hips. This allows our glutes and our hamstrings to be put on maximal stretch, which means we're going to get a lot of tension in that area, and that's exactly where we need to be driving from. If we let the knees drop and our shin angle heads forward, we're going to put a lot more emphasis on the quads, and that's much more of a clean setup. Step 2, the grip. Now we've got a few options here. Option number 1 is just a normal overhand grip, and this is where I think everyone should start. It's really good at building overall strength in our grip and our forearm. The trouble is eventually that's going to fail, especially when the barbell gets nice and heavy. So then we have to just move over into the next option. Option number 1 is we've got the hook grip. Thumbs go underneath, fingers go over the top. Really great, strong position to be in. However, it is quite uncomfortable, especially in and around the thumbs. Option number 2 for that is we've got the mixed grip. One goes over, one goes under. This is a very, very strong grip, but again, it's just different in terms of how we're positioning. One is over and one is under, so therefore different load in the upper part of the body. So we might need to mix that up to get the balance right. And then finally, the one that I prefer, especially where we go nice and heavy with the barbell, is using the straps. It just means that it's not going to fail. We don't have to concentrate on whether the barbell is going to fall from our hands, and we can concentrate entirely on driving with the legs and the body. Step number 3, the hips and the chest. Vital for the efficiency of the lift. Let's start with the hips. Our hips need to be high enough so that we maintain tension through the hamstrings and the glutes, which means that basically they're on stretch as much as possible. So that's where all the maximum tension is. That mechanical stress is what helps build strength and growth in that tissue. If we drop the hips too low, you'll notice that the knees will bend forward. Therefore, the emphasis is much more on the quads. This is known as more of a clean setup. So with the hips in an ideal position where they're higher, hamstrings are on, glutes are on, we're pretty good to go. We then just have to think about the chest position. Now for me, I like to try and get my chest up so that it engages all of the back muscles. The reason why this is important for me is because once those muscles are locked on and engaged, I can concentrate on driving away from the floor with my legs without losing too much shape in the upper part of the back. I don't mind if you want to start in a flexed position of the spine, as long as we are braced. So you will have to find a way to get engagement in that upper back. One way in doing that is trying to snap the bar and thinking about getting some tension in the upper part of the back. Now the reason why I prefer to lift my chest and maintain that position is because I want to build a habit, and I want each rep to be very, very similar. I think lots of people get into trouble when they start changing positions when they're at 95% of the weight that they want to lift, especially when it's super heavy. Let's say, for example, chest is up, back's nice and flat. We are driving away with the legs, 60 kilos, 100 kilos, 140 kilos, and we're in the same position. The body has built adaptation around those positions at that weight. Now, let's say we're getting very, very close to our 1 rep max, and on that final 10 or 20 kilos that we add to the bar, because the weight is heavy and we're unable to maintain this position, we start to lose that lower back. Spinal flexion is okay as long as we build up adaptation to that. Where we might come into trouble is when that spinal flexion has just now been exposed to a new load at the top end of our weight. And this is where we can often get areas of discomfort and possibly injury. Step number 4, the brace and the breath. We want to maintain tension through the midline as much as possible. What we don't want to find ourselves doing is breathing out, exhaling, and losing pressure in that midline as we lift. We want to create the tension so that we can protect the spine and we're nice and efficient. Effectively, we're trying to transfer the weight and the load from the legs to the upper body. This is really important, it's nice and tight. So, hands on the bar, pull ourselves into that position, engage through that upper part of the back, deep breath, tight, drive with the legs. We can then reset the breath at the top, re-engage, lower. That's what I want you to be thinking about when we breathe and we engage through that midline. Step number 5, the drive and the lockout. When we're lifting the barbell away from the floor, we want to keep it as close to the body as possible. I want it running up and down the shins and the thighs. If that barbell drifts away from the body, it's going to put a lot of stress, especially on that lower back. Now to finish that rep, we want to lock out at the top. I don't want you to be thinking about leaning back to finish that rep, which is very common. I want you to be thinking about bringing your hips towards the bar. Once that barbell has cleared the knees, we need to be thinking about squeezing the bum to meet the bar rather than extending through that lower back to meet it. Step number 6, the lowering phase. What we don't want to do is just rely on gravity to take the barbell down. We need to use the hamstrings to lower that barbell so we can build strength in the lengthening phase of that contraction. And that's known as the eccentric part. This is a vital component to build strength and growth in and around those tissues, such as the hamstrings and the glutes. So don't miss out on this element of the lift. When we're lowering the barbell, I want you to be thinking about a 2-second downward phase and think about your hamstrings lowering yourself down. That's going to help build that eccentric strength. Step number 7, load. Now, this is where we're going to be most susceptible to injury if we get this wrong. It's not about your technique or the efficiency in the lift, it's all to do with load. If you're new to this lift, keep the weight very, very light. Concentrate on high volume, which means high reps and low weight. Let your body adapt, the tissues will get stronger, the nervous system will start to learn those movement patterns, and you'll start to get more and more efficient in the lift. As we perform hundreds of these reps, the body will adapt. It will allow us to get more resilient in these positions and more efficient, and therefore we can start adding more weight in these positions. You definitely need to stay away from your 1 rep max. Be patient, build reps, earn your stripes, then build weight.